As our best of series continues here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, it's an ESPN takeover on Monday's edition. It is June 23rd, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. The show is growing each and every day because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes each and every day, making sure we look good and sound good. We appreciate him. We shout him out. He's on Twitter. You can hit him up at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And normally we've got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line available for you at 707-654-4693. We won't this week, though. Best of shows going on as I'm on vacation, getting a little R&R. Only do it once a year, so want to make sure I take full advantage of it and really appreciate it soaking in, and then be ready to rock and roll when we get back and go full throttle, right, and get ready because football season will be here sooner rather than later, which is wild to say, but already got a training camp scheduled from the Raiders, so I know that training camp is literally going to be right around the corner. Coming up on today's show, I teased it on Friday's show, had a really good conversation with the legend Chris Berman, Boomer, the Raaiiddas, right? The guy that most of us grew up watching on SportsCenter, ESPN to some capacity. Had a great conversation with him, myself and Randy Scott. Matter of fact, Randy Scott was filling in on Joe and Q on ESPN Radio, and we were celebrating Chris Berman, really, because he celebrated, he signed a contract extension that's going to keep him with the company through 2029, which will make him the first 50-year employee of ESPN. Obviously, that's a big deal. He's an original. He's one of the guys that, like I said, most of us grew up watching him. So we threw a shot out there. Hey, man, maybe we can get him on to talk about it and talk about his accomplishments and how ESPN's grown, just talk about some of his experiences. And believe it or not, he was like, yeah, cool, I'll join the show. So I was really honored to be able to have that opportunity to be a part of that conversation. So segment number 2 and 3, you'll hear the conversation. Myself, Randy Scott from ESPN, as well as Chris Berman. Really good stuff. Definitely think you'll appreciate that. That'll be in segment number 2 and 3. Here in segment number 1, you'll hear from Mina from ESPN. Obviously, she's on NFL Live. She's on the Mina show with Lenny all the time. And we'll go ahead and jump right into it. As a matter of fact, the reason why I had Mina and wanted to have her on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920, is because she was putting out some rankings when it came to quarterbacks. So she had Ollie Conley on her show, and they were ranking quarterbacks to start a team from scratch with a 3-year timeline. And obviously that caught my attention. She's a big Geno Smith supporter. Obviously she's a big Seattle Seahawks fan, and she supports Pete Carroll. She respects what he does. But this is initially what she said as they were going through the rankings when it came to, again, starting a team for scratch in a 3-year timeline. Geno Smith, she had coming in at number 16 is what she had to say.
I'm taking Geno here. F it. I can't put Geno in the second half.
Geno's the best. What is that to say? He's the most aggressive quarterback in the league. He never gets sacked, particularly in quick game. No one can get to him quick enough. He just rips the ball down the field. Second best quarterback in the league last year on e-paper play on 3-step drops. When it's rhythm and he can just drop and rock with it, he's tremendous. And the idea that the Raiders fans you were saying at the top might be somewhat disappointed by, I don't get that. You got yourselves what I think is one of the 10 best starters in the league over the last couple of seasons, and to go and just get that guy for nothing is sensational.
So if we were doing 1 year, I would have him higher. This is a 3-year timeline. He is an older quarterback. And, he's had a few injuries here and there. But yeah, I mean, I've mentioned this a million times, Raiders fans, but he to me is one where you really have to, watch the tape. It was funny when the Steelers put out like DK Metcalf highlights, everybody was like, good Lord, Geno Smith. Oh my God. Like half these, like some of the best throws I've ever seen. Just unbelievably accurate, second highest on target rate behind Joe Burrow last season, consistently ranks near the top of the NFL in completion percentage over expected, accurate throwing downfield, accurate, very tricky circumstances to say the least. I mean, I mentioned that Drake May faced the highest quick pressure rate. Geno Smith was right behind him. The biggest ding on him is interception rate when pressured, 36 in the NFL last year. He made some really bad choices. And I think just whether or not he can cut down on those and whether or not they can build this like run first play action offense or whatever they're going to do in Vegas, I think is going to go a long way towards whether or not they can limit those negative plays. But just in a vacuum, he is one of the best pure throwers of football we have in the NFL right now.
So that was Mina Kimes along with Ollie Connolly. Again, the Mina Kimes show along with Lenny on YouTube. She does a really good job with that, but she's always on NFL Live. Last time I caught up with her was at in New Orleans, Radio Row, leading into Super Bowl 59 when Pete Carroll was the head coach and Geno Smith was not yet traded for. He was not the quarterback of the Raiders. So reached out. My man Ari reached out, was able to get Mina Kimes on the show, and thought we had a really good conversation based off what you just heard. Her and Ollie Connolly were talking about when it came to the rankings of Geno Smith. That's where it started, but that's not what it was limited to. Here's that conversation with Mina Kimes. What is that dynamic like? What are the Raiders getting in a Pete Carroll, Geno Smith combination?
Professionalism, expertise, grown coaching and quarterbacking. I should start here. I think that the Raiders are going to have the single biggest upgrade quarterback position of any team. And I think Raiders fans should be more excited about Geno Smith, to be honest, because as having watched him very closely in Seattle, but just generally, he is, I think, extremely underrated. He was in pretty adverse circumstances those last 2 years, and I think he's going to really thrive in this offense.
What is it that makes him so underrated? Like, what stands out that I guess doesn't stand out to enough people about Geno Smith?
I think it's the context that matters. People watched him and they saw at times maybe struggles on third down, some of the interceptions last year. But I think what maybe is not properly accounted for is just how much pressure he was under in Seattle. I mean, he faced over the last 2 years at least the third most quick pressure in football. And the Seahawks offensive line was frankly a disaster. And I understand the Raiders offensive line is young and they're in transition, but I think it's an upgrade for him. I think he's going to be paired with a much better run game that he was saddled with, as well as a refusal to run the ball in Seattle. And what you get to see when he's actually protected is he's unbelievably accurate. He can throw to all parts of the field. He can make good decisions. He's really good at reading defenses. So I just think there's going to be a lot of upside in this offense. Again,
Mina Kimes for the Mina Kimes Show, and ESPN is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. We were watching your show that you did when you had the quarterback draft, where you were starting a team from scratch with a 3-year timeline, and Geno came in right at 16, and you said, well, he's a little older, or I would have had him a little bit higher. Yeah. What do you believe is the ceiling for Geno Smith as he is right now with the Raiders?
I think you can get quarterback play in the 5 to 15 range. I think definitely top 10 quarterback play is entirely possible. It's what you saw from him in Seattle that first year when his surroundings were a bit better. And I like what they're doing in Vegas. It's not the strongest receiver group, but I think it's going to be a unique offense. It's obviously kind of tight end led with a very interesting run game. We could talk about that with Chip Kelly. And I think he's going to have just a much better infrastructure around him. And, when you run the ball and you run the ball well, defenses can't tee off on you the way they were in Seattle. So I do think the ceiling's high.
Yeah, it was funny. Ollie Connolly, who was on that show with you, said that, Chip Kelly, great. Geno Smith, great. Pairing, I'm not too sure about. How do you think that those two do pair together and put this offense together?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, guy. Because the last time we saw Chip Kelly in the NFL, people think of him as spread things out, tempo. And that's not who he was the last couple of years in college. I think he really evolved as a play caller. You certainly saw that watching Ohio State. It's much more of a traditional pro-style offense in some regards, but he's really creative in terms of using personnel groupings, formation to manipulate defenses and get the run game going. And he's got some pretty fun pieces to work with. So I think the marriage could work out well. And especially I think for Chip, thing about Geno Smith is, again, you don't have to baby him. Yeah, I mean, he carries so much on his shoulders in terms of reading defenses, setting protections, and that makes life a lot easier for everybody.
You mentioned Ashton Genty a little while ago. How much does he, factor into this equation? Even as a rookie, how much is he going to help Geno Smith as well?
He, to me, is just part of the broader puzzle of helping Geno Smith by having a run game, and it's not just about Ashton. I think the offensive line, frankly, Ashton himself, it's not going to be, they're not going to be able to justify the draft pick unless the offensive line takes the step that I think a lot of folks, myself included, believe they're capable of. But I think this has the potential to be a very balanced offense. I mean, he's a really special player. You don't need me to tell you that. You can run everything with him. And even that ability he has, that seeming like unnatural capacity to get 5 yards when you think he's going to get 3, that to me is going to help put Gino in favorable down and distances.
What do you think is the biggest challenge or the biggest concern when you look at Geno Smith in his game right now?
I thought his worst flaw last year in Seattle was some of the decisions, particularly in the red zone. He did throw interceptions under pressure where it just felt like he was trying to do too much. And he would be the first person probably to say that. And some of that, yes, had to do with the protection, but he knows he has to be a better decision maker. So I just think, again, if he doesn't feel like, the whole offense is on my shoulders and we can't run the ball, that should hopefully lead to better decisions, because that was really the only flaw that jumped out to me last season.
Mina Kimes is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. For Pete Carroll, we saw him just yesterday. He tried to pin down an offensive lineman like he was in WWE. What is it that makes this guy, even though people will tell you he's the oldest coach in the league, make him seem like the youngest coach in the league? It just kind of makes him go.
It's the energy. I think the way he connects with other people. I mean, every player I know who's ever played for him says he is just one of the best players coaches they've ever experienced, just in terms of treating them like human beings, figuring out what they're good at. He's a great teacher, particularly when it comes to defensive back play, which, I've been positive about the Raiders because we've been talking about the offense. A lot of question marks on that pass defense, but yeah, he's just a remarkable communicator and leader. What
do you see when you look at the league in general, and every year there's 5-6 teams that didn't make the playoffs that do make the playoffs? Right. The Raiders play in the AFC West. How difficult is that going to be for them to make that kind of a jump?
Really hard. I think that's the biggest limiting factor here with the Raiders, other than the pass defense. I think both the Chargers and the Broncos have the potential to take a bit of a leap this season. And, so even if the Raiders are as improved on offenses, I really believe they can be. If the defense can't approach average, then they're probably not going to make it into the playoffs.
Right. No, it's going to be a difficult road to hoe, that's for sure. Again, Mina Kimes from ESPN is with us here, Raider Nation Radio 920. I asked about Geno Smith and his biggest challenges. What do you think Ashton Genty's biggest challenge will be as he transitions into the NFL from Boise State?
Level of competition. I mean, you said it was Boise State, right? And you saw in games where, in Penn State, I mean, some of his games against harder competition, he certainly produced more than most would, but you definitely saw when talent discrepancy affected the offensive line, it affected him as well. So I think, again, for Genty, key is going to be that offensive line improving in front of him. Jackson Powers-Johnson, you played the sound of him, I think is a key figure in this offense now that he's cemented at center. I thought he had some promising moments last year, but yeah, they have to take a leap forward for him to take, to come anywhere close to meeting the expectations that have been set for him.
Thought that was a really good way to start things off today. A little ESPN takeover here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. But Mina Kimes talks about, what Geno Smith does really well, his struggles, what he needs to clean up, right? And how difficult it definitely will be for the Raiders in 2025 to be that playoff team that everyone wants the Raiders to be, including myself, right? I know a lot of people will say, I don't know about that, Q. You didn't say they're going to win 10 or 11 games. Again, AFC West is very difficult. Very difficult division. It very easily could end up being the most difficult division in football, as 3 out of the 4 teams last season did make it to the postseason. So we'll see how it shakes out. But again, I've been very comfortable, 8 to 9 wins. And if you get there, anything is possible. You can always win another game or 2, and all of a sudden you're looking at 11. Now you are in that playoff conversation. Coming up in segment number 2 and 3, we'll switch gears a little bit, but stick with the ESPN theme. Really good conversation I was able to have with Chris Berman, the Raaiiddas, right? Every time you hear that, you know where that came from. That came from Chris Berman. We don't get into anything Raiders, but we really celebrate him. 50 years at one company at ESPN is a massive, massive thing. You'll hear that conversation coming up next, part 1, here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is FanDuel. The NBA Finals done deal records. Every night delivered highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. So it's not over because the NBA season's over. Oh no. Now Major League Baseball, full throttle, right? We really pay attention to what's going on there. Player prop bets, you can get that. Favorite teams, teams that are streaking, everything that you want to have a part of the action. You can always get a piece of the action, Major League Baseball related. Aaron Judge, all rise, home run chase, Shohei Ohtani when it comes to strikeouts, now that he's back on the mound and hitting home runs, all that could be part of your FanDuel bet. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If you win, it's going to get you $200 in bonus bets. Again, you want to stay in the action. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to jump into part 1 of the conversation that myself and Randy Scott, we were holding it down on Joe and Q on ESPN Radio. Randy Scott was filling in for Joe Fortenbaugh on the day, and so we had an opportunity to catch up with Chris Berman. We were celebrating him, 50 years at the company, ESPN, after signing his contract that held him through 2029. And oh, by the way, ESPN is getting a Super Bowl, and that'll be that 2029 year where the Super Bowl will actually be broadcasted on ESPN. So I don't really have to say anything else. Chris Berman was the star of this show. All I asked was a couple questions. Matter of fact, there was one moment I didn't even ask him a question. I just said, thank you for being you, because again, he's a guy that I grew up watching, admired obviously from a distance. And there's multiple guys at the network that I was able to look up to and, eventually paved my path to where I am today. They're not the only reason why I'm where I am today, but they're definitely guys that I looked up to early on before I ever knew what I really wanted to do in life. Here's part 1 of that conversation with Chris Berman. We wanted to have you on the show to, celebrate you. You just recently inked a contract that'll send you through 2029, being the company's first 50-year employee. You were signed back in October of 79, and I'm definitely not trying to make you sound old or feel old, but what does that mean to know that you're going to be with ESPN through 50 years?
Well, first of all, fellas, thanks for having me on. I remember day one of ESPN Radio. I've been here long enough to know where the bodies are buried. I just can't tell you. But what does it mean to me? Unbelievably proud, because I kind of stand. It's going to sound, written out, but anyone that knows me knows this is the way that all of us are. I stand on the shoulders of many names that people will never know, many who haven't worked here in 40 years, 30 years, or many who are just starting to work here now or maybe working here a year from now. It takes a lot to build a village. That's not exactly the metaphor. And I'm happen to be here at the first month, or 1 month in, I should say, and to know that I, along with a lot of other folks, have had a hand in laying a couple of bricks that now look what we've got. We had one building, we had 70 people. We were hoping that it would make it, that cable TV would make it. That's the dating myself. We can get into it, but anybody under 40 thinks that we always had 300 channels, let alone 3,000, or, all the streaming we have now. Back then, cable was a gamble, let alone ESPN. Sports, really? I'm going to pay, what, $20 for this box that makes my TV set go from 5 stations to 36? I got to go to work. I got to sleep. I got to eat. How am I going to watch this at 3 a.m? Cable TV, really? So I'm dating myself, but these were real questions when we started.
Yeah.
Here's the good news, and I'll let you guys fire at me. So I was 24. So it was, what decision was that to say, we'd like you to do a Sports Center every night, admittedly late, like real late, because you've been on TV 3 months before you came here, but you get to do sports every day. Okay, where do I sign up? I'll see you in 2 weeks. That's kind of how it went.
Yeah. Boom. This is Randy Scott. I do the Sports Center in the morning now, which wasn't.
I know it.
Wasn't
You've
around.
You've been all over the map.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So,
yeah.
Randy,
you
listen,
go where they tell you.
Let me jump in. So my first 3-4 years were like 2:30 a.m., the late one, in the East.
Yeah. I was driving. Oh, my God. 2:30.
But we're the only ones that could give you the Dodgers-Giants score. You had to wait a day to get the newspaper. You know what I mean? If you didn't watch us. So there you go. Anyway, I didn't mean to jump in on you. Thanks for doing Sports Center. You guys, it remains a flagship.
You guys, but see, the whole shoulders standing on thing, it's you, man. I mean, we prep over in DC2 now, which wasn't around in 79 when you and Bob Lee and everybody were getting this thing off the ground, to be sure. And now we're in this building, and we walk to a new studio that has started since I was starting here in 2012. Like, I've seen it. I've been lucky over 13 years to see it grow the way that it has. I'm wondering for someone like you who goes from one building and one hope of, like you said, cable TV and ESPN getting off the ground. When you come back to campus, as you're going to do a lot more now, it sounds like. Congratulations on a multi-year deal to get you over 50 years at the network. Like, when you come back, what are some of the things that stand out to you walking around?
The size of it, for one, and you drive down the street, and in the early days, and again, I'm going to keep dating myself, but we had a couple of dishes, out in front, a couple to send the signal up to Telstar or wherever the hell it was going. That's beyond my pay grade, Randy, and a couple to receive them.
Yeah.
And that's where it was. And I remember the outcry of, nobody really got it. Like, wait a minute, we're going to be radioactive here if we drive past that every day, not from our employees, but from some people in Bristol. Like, I said, no, you're going to get a good suntan. Relax, just stand out there, just drive past it. At any rate, what do I feel? A sense of pride. But what's fun for me, again, I've only been 70 a couple of days, and I limited it to 7 candles because I wanted to get it in one shot, the cake. But 70, we could still be there, and that was May 10th, so I could still be trying to blow the rest of them out right now. I see in the faces of 20s and 30-year-olds, let alone, the folks on air. I could be doing any job, walking to the cafeteria, walking, on a nice day or even a snowy day outside. How you doing? I see energy. I feed off it still. I don't try to put myself in their body as they walk by, but I every now and then say, Randy, that, and Q, that that was me once. Admittedly, not walking around a campus that looks collegiate, or in size. I mean, then we have one building. Oh, my God. Bob Lee and I still have a joke. And some of us old-timers, we still say, we had a second building. Then we had a building number 3. Things will be better in the new building. That's still our joke. Like it'll be okay when we open up building 3. So just a sense of pride. I don't know that it's wonderment because I've seen it, if not brick by brick, I've seen it, but it was only a year or two ago, for example, that they said, Xander Schauffele, who's a friend of mine, he's going to have a putting contest with you on our putting green. And I had to call. I went, wait a minute, we have a putting green?
He wears the putting green, yeah.
And it's kind of rubberized. I mean, it's not it's nothing we have to mow, let's put it that way, right? And but I actually drove up on it. We were taping it on a Monday, and I said, I better, maybe there's some home cooking here by knowing where the bumps are in this thing. And I had to call and ask where it was. And the day before, I snuck up there for like 30 minutes and actually sunk a long one on him and had him nervous for maybe 1 second, but I didn't know we had a putting green. I mean, again, you think I know where everything is? I don't.
ESPN legend Chris Berman with us here on Joe and Q on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. And I got to admit, I just have to thank you. And I have to thank you for what you did. I told Randy earlier in the show, you basically raised me. I remember watching SportsCenter with my dad before I went to school every single morning, and you were on. I remember, as you mentioned, 2:30 in the morning, watching it late night and keeping my TV on even though I wasn't supposed to. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and you'd be on giving highlights. And, one of the big reasons and motivations that I even wanted to get into the business that I'm in now here at ESPN, privileged to do that. So I don't really have a question. I just wanted to thank you for being you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. We didn't know any better. We like to say that we were rebels without a clue. And but we were just doing the sports. Thing is that for me, I'm a little more upbeat than your normal, but never with nicknames or you could go all the way and things like that ended up being staples, I guess. Never, and none of us did, and really is not the way to do it. Okay, I got to have something that makes people know who I am. That was just organic.
Yep.
And I appreciate you. How old are you? Tell me.
48. I'm 48.
Okay, so when you were 8, maybe, or 7, 8, the late show was repeated in the morning, and that's what you were seeing. And that was a big revelation to people that I can get the West Coast hockey or whatever you were interested in scores in the morning before going to school. It really, SportsCenter and ESPN here's what I pride myself in, and thank you again for the comment, and all of us do. We like to think, never 100%, nobody bats 1,000, right? But more often than not, that we put a smile, and you do it here on radio. Do we put a smile on someone's face? I don't mean a comedy show. I don't mean that. Mm-hmm. But do we put a smile on someone's face? I had someone that operates, an internist. They're operating on people. Hospitals, this, and he said, what you do is important. Whoa. No, you're in there at 7 a.m. and prepping somebody and giving them a gift, if not of life, a better life, etc. What we do is not important. He goes, well, what do you think on Sunday? I get a chance to watch NFL primetime, and for an hour, I'm not worried about the next morning, 12 hours later. Okay, I have this, and this is going to be a delicate operation. I said, again, that doesn't make it important. He goes, yes, but that hour is important to me. So you get into these conversations with folks through the years that it allows you to think a little bit more than what we're doing. Again, is what we're doing, quote, important? Not really. Mm-hmm. But is it? But it depends on whose eyes are looking at it. And the fact that you bonded with your dad, not that you wouldn't otherwise, that's a smile. Now, to put a difference in our age, being 70, I went to sleep sometimes with the little transistor radio under the pillow so Mom and Dad couldn't tell that I was listening to maybe a baseball game growing up in Connecticut, that out west, or heaven forbid it was 10:30, it was in the 8th inning or something, or a hockey game. They'll never know. And then they'd wake you up in the morning for school and the thing would still be on. So I don't think I could put cable TV under the pillow, so maybe I had it easier,
I thought the end of that part 1 was fantastic, and I've talked about it here on the show before, talking about we never know what a show means to someone. I could sit there and think that you tune in, you listen, you're like, okay, I got some Raider conversation, now I can go start my day, or I can finish my day, or whatever the case may be. But you never really know what an individual show, that's podcast, that's radio, that's TV, sports, whatever the case may be. You never know what it means to an individual person. It could be your escape. It could be your 30 minutes of not having to worry about any of the trial and tribulations. And I say it about myself all the time when it comes to even recording the show or being on the radio. When I'm on the radio for 3 hours or 6 hours or whatever it is, because when it's live radio, it's 6 hours a day, and then obviously the podcast as well, I'm able to escape and clear my mind from anything that may be going on, in my personal life or something that I may be dealing with, and strictly just focus on what I'm doing, and it really puts me in a much better place. Now, obviously, reality kicks in afterwards, but still, it's for that moment. It helps you with that escape. And I thought that story that Berman said right there about the doctor and how important NFL primetime was for him, even though, like Chris said, had no idea. So I think that that's really, really important and something that we should always keep in mind, regardless what we're doing, because, again, you never know what it means to someone else. Coming up in segment number 3, we'll have part 2 of the conversation with Chris Berman as we celebrate him 50 years at ESPN. That comes up next here on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to jump into part 2 of the conversation with Chris Berman. Had really good stuff from him in segment number 1. Myself and Randy Scott. Again, this was on Joe and Q on ESPN Radio as Randy was filling in for Joe Fortenbaugh. Got into a really good conversation. And Randy's in a good position because he's doing SportsCenter. He's doing highlights. He's doing what Chris Berman was doing early on in his career there at ESPN. So he could really relate even more. And, of course, me just being a guy that watched him and has had to talk to him and been able to have the pleasure of talking to him at different events that I've been at so far throughout the course of my career. It was a real good honor to have him on the radio for as long as we did, 20-plus minutes. Here's part 2 of that conversation.
Boom. I wonder, for someone who has been around so many big events, I mean, I have visions of you as your own security detail at Candlestick after a Niners-Cowboys finish or something. Like also out in San Francisco at the Earthquake Series. I can think of these major events that you've covered, and I wonder what motivates you to, keep making sure that the security badge works at the front gate. You know what I mean? Like, what is it about maybe this next deal that's going to go through 2029 that keeps you coming to Bristol? You know what I mean? Because I know it's not the Birch Street Tavern or whatever it was across the street. Like some of these places have come and gone. It's not Kiesel's down the street for the breakfast sandwich.
Well, for those that don't know, when we first started, there wasn't a lot on West Street driving past our place. Chisels was one of the few places we could get something to eat, and then it was originally Hamps, and then it was the White Birch, and then we bought that property and a lot more, and literally it's a parking lot. And I went, oh my God, we paid Paradise and we put up the parking lot, Joni Mitchell. But what keeps me coming?
Yeah.
Waking up every day, knowing that you're coming in, and again, I'm not doing the workload, and I haven't for quite a while that I used to, or workload. We're not in a coal mine. Let's remember this, mm-hmm. Right? So, and God bless those folks. But we come in, and there's no script. Well, we know who's playing, right? And yet, the best game of the night is the one that you really didn't even care about. I mean, I think of NFL prime times when back in the day, and again, not 1979, 80, I mean, even 90s and early 2000s when, heaven forbid, you only got 3 games on your TV on Sunday, and you might have seen at halftime a cut in of a long play in the 49ers Rams, later. But I remember one prime time we almost didn't make it. I mean, we've never had a game go, but this was the closest. It was like 5 minutes to go, and it finally ended. It was Seattle at Arizona, like in the early 90s or mid-90s, 45-42. I'm making it up, but I don't remember. And 3% of the country saw it. But it was the best game of the month. And you hand you a shot sheet. Well, I haven't seen it. All I know is by the way, for those of you who might have just been watching Seattle at Arizona, but the 97% that didn't see it, here you go. And we're doing highlights blind, like we do every day and night. And that's fun. So knowing that there's no script, I mean, even Disney writes scripts. And speaking of Disney, 50 years, if I make, I like to think I'm a young 70. I mean, it's not, I used to think 70 was ancient, but not anymore. Although I did look up the tables, by the way, like if you reach 70 in the United States, what's the expectancy? And the average for a male is 85 and for a female, 87. So I'm good there. So I'm good. maybe they're going to give me a gold watch, a Mickey Mouse gold watch, and that's what keeps me coming through the door. I'm kidding, but maybe they will. They got 5 years to make good on this, though, so it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
now that gold watch is definitely coming. There's no doubt, as it should. There's no doubt, and great stuff as always. And boom, before we let you go, I just wanted to ask you real quick. I remember seeing you in preparation of Super Bowl 50. We were in San Francisco. I was about to interview Freddie Bolitnikoff. I was working for ESPN Central Texas, and you turned and looked and said, "Nice jacket." And I had a jacket that said ESPN. It had the logo on it, and it just kind of reminded me of how much ESPN has grown. What does it feel like for you when you look around and see so many affiliates and see so many people that have that ESPN name attached to them, knowing that you were original?
Well, it's not so much that I was original, but like we didn't have all those things, which is a good question. And if you weren't, if you're in, as you say, Texas or wherever folks are that you have the ESPN name on it, I hope it puts a little, if you're an employee or on air or behind the scenes or whatever you're doing at these radio stations, whatever, selling ads, which ain't easy in radio, local, et cetera. I know I lived it. Not selling ads, but being local radio. I mean, not very long, but a couple of years before I got to TV. I hope it puts a little bit of pep in your mind and step in one as someone wearing a jacket, theoretically, going to work every day for it. Not that you wouldn't wherever you work, because if you don't go to work with pride or trying to do your best, even though there are many days. Thank God we didn't have a lot. Most of my early stuff, you can't find it anymore. I mean, I probably made more mistakes than anybody. But as I used to tell our guys, it's on its way to Pluto. Don't worry about it. You can't get it now. So it's refueling at Neptune, actually. So I feel I smile because I hope, like I say, that puts a little extra giddy up in someone working for ESPN in whatever capacity. I mean, and I still am going to bring that in the building every day. If I start to wane in my ability, I'm not chasing 50 years. It was an accidental chase. When I got to 45 and I got my 45-year thing, I got asked a few times in interviews like this, "So do you want to make it to 50? And I never thought of that. I actually never thought of that. And then I happened to be the last one whose starting date was in 1979, whose staff, I mean, we have Dick Vitale and Cliff Drysdale, and there's some others that have been working at ESPN, but I guess staff-wise, I'm it. And I said, that's like from old school. That's like two generations before me. People worked for a company for 50 years. How cool would that be? And I'll give our president, Jimmy Patero, credit. I said, Jimmy, I never thought of it. I thought this would be a pretty cool idea. He lunged at it. He was like, yeah. And I said, again, not my goal, but I've gotten this far.
Yeah.
I mean, why? We're running a marathon. Why stop at? Why give up on Heartbreak Hill, right? So, it was never a goal. Like, you got to work somewhere for 50 years. Are you kidding?
Right. Yeah.
I pinch myself at that. So, and you guys are carrying it in the afternoon here. On radio, people are driving. I got a couple texts ahead of time. Can't wait to hear you. A friend of mine I hadn't seen in a long time. A guy named Roscoe is probably listening right now in Florida, in Central Florida. Hey, you're coming on in 5 minutes. Can't wait to hear you. You see, you never know who's listening or watching, and you owe it to them to do your very, very best. So I'm going to give that till I'm done.
Boom, to echo what Q said, you and I first crossed paths in Sanibel, Florida, and I know you have these connections and these stories with everybody from Sanibel out to Hawaii. So you've been a fantastic representative of this place, and it feels right with you calling the Super Bowl here in a couple of years. The first one that ESPN's going to have, and being a part of that, man. So this is really cool, really cool. Not to step on what Q said, but he speaks for both of us when he says this is a really, really cool conversation to get to have. And I don't know about you, but I think about you, and I think about people who you did shows with, their pictures hanging up while we get ready for the morning show, man. It's you and Greg Gumbel, and it's you and John Saunders, and it's you and Tommy Meese, and it's just a really cool flag that you continue to carry. And I know you know that. I know it's not lost on you, and it's really cool to get to work at the same place as Chris Berman for a few more years.
That's awesome.
I'm glad you brought up those three names. Greg and I worked quite a bit in the '80s, but John Saunders and Tom Mees those are special shows that I did with them. I think of them all the time.
Yeah.
And they would be proud to see what this place has become, especially Tommy, who we lost in the 90s. And everyone's a big part of it, as are you guys. Everybody, we put it out there every day. And that ain't that easy. It ain't as easy as people think. So it's done from the heart, and I know this show is one of the many that's done that way. So, and sports centers still are. Different consumption these days, but it doesn't make it less, quote, important, So
right.
This has been fun. This is good. Hey, look, I fooled them one more time. I'm still working here, so it's great.
Hey, that's all that matters. We love every minute. Again, Chris Berman, the ESPN legend, signed an extension with ESPN, keeping him with the network through 2029 to become the company's first 50-year employee, and he'll have a prominent role in the network's first Super Bowl broadcast in 2027 and continues to host signature NFL primetime show on ESPN+. Boomer, thanks so much. Congratulations. And again, we appreciate you for being you.
Well, and we appreciate it, fellas, having me on. Keep up the great work, and see you in the hallway sometime. I look forward to it.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Boom.
There you go. Hopefully you enjoyed the ESPN takeover on today's show. Again, little best of that we've got cooking while I'm on vacation. Best of day 3 coming up tomorrow. Best of day 4. Trying to think which direction we'll go. I'm not 100% sure what direction we'll go, but we'll definitely dig deep into probably some of the rookie class, some of the contributors that I had on my show to talk about some of the rookies that the Raiders will be trotting out there in 2025. I think that's the direction that we'll go coming up tomorrow. Best of day number 4, again, as I'm on vacation. So definitely appreciate you rocking with me, Raider Nation, and we'll continue this the rest of the week, and then we'll be back starting on Monday, full throttle, ready to go, and and get ready because football season will be here sooner rather than later. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.